allowing your whole body to settle, to become quiet and restful. Feeling your weight release through the body, into the seat or into the floor. Softening the shoulders, releasing your neck, allowing your head to feel as though it is floating upward effortlessly. Letting go of your upper arms, your elbows and lower arms. Softening your chest and upper back, your belly, your lower back. Softening your legs so that they're just easy, resting comfortably on the ground. Making space through your torso. Allowing the breath to flow freely in and out. With each comfortable exhalation, your whole body softens, releasing. With each gentle inhalation, a deep sense of stillness. If you have trouble with letting go or becoming still, then a small sense of relaxation and a subtle sense of stillness. You do whatever part you can, and slowly it deepens. Learning to quiet the mind by relaxing it, not by controlling it. And remember that one way to learn to relax the mind is by letting go of distractions. So if you notice your mind being distracted by some idea, try to see the idea clearly. Notice that you're doing it, noticing that you're daydreaming about something that's not happening. Notice that there's a real life happening and then there's some thought process. And if you can see that, perhaps your mind will lose interest and your awareness will drift back. That's a letting go process. You don't have to try to be in the present moment. Present moment is all you have. The rest is delusion. We're letting go of delusions, not fighting them as though they're actually real. You don't have to fight fake things. You just relax around them. Part of learning to, most people can feel their skin all over their body. Oftentimes they can even move their awareness space if they really try. So what we're doing is we're asking awareness to begin to soak in a bit more deeply than before, a little bit more into that space just beneath the surface. Eventually, you want to allow your mind to be able to soak into your body. Your awareness soaks into your body like a sponge. And this changes the quality of the tissues and the way the chi flows in the body. So we start with a little bit deeper than usual, and we release that space. And at different phases of practice, you go a little bit more deep, a little bit more open. Some big ravens flying around. And by allowing that awareness to settle into your tissues, things begin to change. And part of that is softening so that chi can flow there, so that your mind can flow there. It's all one way of doing this. So softness must include awareness for it to become deep. So let's go ahead and begin, and I'll take my headphones off for this portion of the head. And as usual, in case we have people here who are joining us for the first time, right in the comment section below the video, there is a link to an introduction video that gives you a sense of what we're doing here. And so feel free to go watch that and then join us at any time. The classes are here for 100 days, and so it can be a little bit difficult to start right in the middle without knowing what you're doing. So if you find yourself in the background hovering, feel free to check down below and look for those videos there. And you can also even watch the first of the 100 days, which is a little bit of a slightly different kind of introduction. And that might give you even more of a sense of what we're doing here and why. And that will make it a little easier to begin. Just in case you're here, but I cannot see you. Del made it. Greetings, Del. I don't know how well they can hear either of us with my headphones on. And just as a reminder for today, to notice the use of the middle finger. Pay attention to the middle fingers. So as a reminder, for those of you who were late, we are working today on letting our awareness soak into our bodies a bit. If you remember how I was mentioning before that we have to regrow our bodies into these new transformed spaces. That's why it's so important to rest and to eat well as we do these practices. And for instance, it takes about 2 or 3 weeks for most people to regrow their whole surface skin, their epidermis. So over your whole body, which you've been with consistently now since we started this practice, is now a completely new system. It's completely different than it was before. It's growing, but it's literally reshaping itself around this stimulation that we're giving to it, hour to 90 minutes. And that's a really powerful thing. And it takes longer for it to sink deeper, to change other things in our body. But as we continue and your body is continually getting stimulus, hey, try this, try to move this way, try to reshape this way. The old goes away and we grow a new shape, a new way that functions differently. Your whole body reformats itself, and then that continues again. And so you've come a lot further than you think. And it's very important to, again, recognize that part of our practice is allowing our awareness to soak into the body, as though the mind is a liquid, awareness is a liquid, and the body is a sponge. And so for most people, it's difficult to get your awareness into your physical frame. So we want to start allowing that awareness to penetrate into the body. And this movement really helps create that connection. Mags! Welcome, Mags. You have to give me a traditional Scottish greeting. If I just follow TV, it's, bagpipes or handing you whiskey or something like that. So I'm sure there's a more formal one that I can give you. We could probably try bagpipes. Softening the shoulder. Easing things open. Your mind reaching into this space. As you do, allow your hands to drop down to, for men, about the level of the nipple. For women, it's just below the level of the fold, the axial fold here, the fold of the armpit. Down in this level, up against the pectoral muscle, softening that space. And then continuing into the armpit itself. That space just between the nipple and the armpit, more or less, is the beginning of the pericardium channel, which is the focus for today. Pericardium is just in a way, it's a layer of tissue around the heart. That's why pericardium. I'll have to. Achai the new. How's my accent? What does it mean? And tell me if I'm being accidentally insulting. I don't mean to. Nice and soft and open. See, there's lots of messages. I haven't seen any of them yet. Easing open here. So again, for today, emphasizing this area here in the front. If I was to turn my palm up, exposes a little bit more of this side of my shoulder, the soft part of the shoulder. We want to ease that open today. Of course, the whole arm as well. But do emphasize a little bit this spot here coming into the arm. And then if you were to feel the bicep, if you were to flex your mighty biceps and squeeze them, and just draw a line down the center of the bicep. You can rub and warm that line. But of course, the whole arm as well. And then down to this fold in the arm, again with my palm turned up. Before we worked on that spot on the lung, which is on the thumb side of that tendon in your elbow there. But what if you went to the other side? The other soft spot, more on the little finger side of the hand. Try releasing that with your palm or your fingertips, easing that area open. This tends to be more important for people who do certain kinds of physical activities, like classically tennis, golf. What's that?
Now he's responded to your question about that phrase off kind of name. She said, no one knows what it means. We just say it to tourists.
Oh, it's a hazing ritual, is what you're saying. Thank you for spreading the hazing. So far we've softened down through the middle of the muscle to this space more along the inside of the elbow. But let's continue on over to the lung side, which is the thumb side of that tendon. Again, you don't have to remember these points or particular channels. I just want you to have a nice sense of each of these lines, generally where they traverse the arms and legs. We will work on more specific points later on in the practice, but we've got 14 weeks altogether to fill up, so there's no rush. You will know far more than you expect to by the end of this. Easing open that point then on the top of the elbow, the large intestine point that we worked on yesterday. Soft, easy. Moving at whatever speed feels like it is melting and softening that layer of tissue. Because again, we are focusing today on letting our awareness soak into the body, feeling that space just below the skin. And as you allow your awareness to penetrate more deeply, I know some of you are able to already feel inside your soft tissue. See if you can feel the spaces between the musculature, around the tendons, the joints. It's all the empty spaces. That's where we're reaching. I have this cool toy over here that I'll pull out in just a little bit that relates to the work that we're doing. I'll let you look at it and wonder, what is that? And then, top of the arm, between those two bones, just a couple sun up, maybe 2.5 centimeters or something like that, depending on your body. Let's work on that one first. Letting your awareness soak into that point. Feel how it warms and opens the wrapping around the wrist. There's a lot of tissue in here that holds the wrist like a hand. We're helping to release that grip from the inside. As long as you are being loving and gentle. Otherwise, it'll just tighten up further. Lots of rain. Beautiful. It does, yeah. These headphones probably cut out the sound of the rain because they're so good at that. But there's a torrential downpour around us right now. It's really nice. So the next point we're going to do is very relevant. So if you were to flex your wrist upward, you can often see if you wiggle your hands around a little bit, most people have two tendons running just along here. Something like 10% of people only have one. So if you only have one, don't worry. That just means you're technically more evolved than the rest of us. And you can come up about that same distance, 2 body inches, we would say, maybe 2.5 centimeters or something, depending on your body size. But you'll come and there will be a hole that your finger falls into. That's pericardium 6, the inner gate. You can begin to soften that point. This point is most famous for treating nausea symptoms. I've actually in the clinic, in my clinic, but I was visiting somebody's home. They were about to vomit. And by stimulating this point, I was actually able to forcibly stop them. It was really uncomfortable for them. They felt like they should vomit, and we stopped them with the point. And so it's a very powerful impact. But it also calms the spirit. It, of course, is also good, like all points are, for local movement of qi. Really wonderful point for lots of things. Softening that open. And then releasing the wrist, easing that space open. Again, stimulating the points here, but also easing that tight band of tissue around the wrist. Very useful for anxiety, or at least it was for me as a kid. Softening the base of the thumb. This whole area here, lung 9, lung 8, lung 7, large intestine 5, lung 10, softening all the way along this line. Again, you don't have to remember these points. This is simply a way to help you easing it open. This point is mostly famous these days for treating frontal headache, but it can do a lot of things. When I would do dental acupuncture for people who are unable to receive anesthetic, they have to find a way to treat the pain. So this is one of the points we would use. Softening it open. And now, palm up. If you were to close your hand, more or less where the middle finger would touch in the center of your palm. If you do Qigong, oftentimes you can see probably the lighting on it won't work here, but as I push qi to my hand, this part of my hand turns bright red. And this is pericardium 8. Lao Gong. And this is a point, for instance, that we put over our eyes, that we're often putting over other points in the body. It's a very important point. And so let's stimulate that with the fingers just for a moment, softening it open. We stimulate this one a lot during the practice through warming our hands, through using them to warm the body. But here, just for today, to practice the point.
Is there like a line of tissue that runs under that point? And I'm feeling something kind of hard.
Yeah, I mean, we do have bones here, bones in the hand, but there's also tendons here, ligaments that are attached. then I'm not sure what you're feeling.
I'll show you later.
There are lines of fascia. There's all kinds. There's muscles that run through here. So I'm not sure which one you're feeling. Especially right here in the center of the palm, because this is most of human life is centered around these points. That's why they call this point Lao Gong, the palace of work. It's the center of work.
For many of us, it's moved to the tips of our fingers.
That's true. So softening open this point, just to become aware of it. We won't do this very often. But this is a very useful spot to warm. And then allow that movement to travel out to the tip of the middle finger, the very tip. This is the last point on the pericardium channel. So go ahead and begin softening that finger. All the other ones as well. So for a memory tool, what reminds you of the middle finger? Go ahead, show the camera. Send us photos on social media. And what else reminds you of the pericardium? It's the heart protector. So it's often related to intimate relationships and the way that we are in relationships because we're always protecting our hearts. So oftentimes it's related to that quality of capacity for intimacy, that kind of thing. So the pericardium has a lot of uses. But whatever it is that reminds you of the pericardium and the middle finger, and relate those two in your mind. Do it. That way you can't forget. And then remind yourself of this finger, whatever reminds you of that, so that you're constantly reminding yourself. By the end of this 2 weeks, you'll have all the channels with no problem. Moving to the other side.
Really good question for the end.
Oh, great. Okay. Mel says that there's good questions for the end. So keep them coming. My instructor says, put the questions in a pot. We have a physical pot that people will sometimes put questions into, saved for later, or you can text them to him, this kind of thing. And so for me, the same, through email, or just drop them into here as you come up with them, and then we can respond to them when the time is right. Remember to emphasize an opening here along the side of the body, side of the pec, along the ribs, just at the base, this direction of the base of the breast, so it's not in the breast tissue itself. It's where the channel emerges from around the heart and comes out. And then, of course, make sure that you soften the armpit itself. So this is that first point of the pericardium channel. Just get a feel for the movement of the channel along the limbs. All of the channels intersect, crisscross, spread out through the sinews and through the body, connect to the various organs, travel to the head, these kinds of things. You don't have to learn all of that stuff. We're just emphasizing the parts that are the most useful for everyday understanding and certainly for this set. So once the top of your shoulder is nice and soft, coming to, again, if you turn your palm upward, this soft front of the shoulder. It's one of those places that can often feel very delicate. If you're doing martial arts, sometimes you'll have a sparring partner or a teacher that's mischievous and will poke or punch this spot, and it can feel surprisingly tender. Yeah, you'd much prefer it here, on the thick part of the arm. It's easy, you feel tough, and then someone jabs you here and you go, ah. And so this is why. This is that soft channel. Everything along this channel you wouldn't really want to have harassed. It's gentle. But make sure that you, of course, soften the whole arm. easing open. And then notice that line that runs just through the center of the bicep. Especially releasing and opening that one today. Feel it warm and soften. Especially if you tend to use your biceps a lot, this becomes very contracted and tight. So you want to allow those tissues to slide open. Our tissues aren't really like pulleys and levers, sticks and ropes. That's the easy way that people often understand it. It's much more well understood through things like fluid dynamics. It's things sliding around and floating and pressurizing toward and away from things. When things become damaged and ill, it's like two of these boards that we were putting in on the floor. Do you like our new flooring? If they were touching toward each other, they'd just grind against each other and they wouldn't move. But if I had some sort of gel between them, they'd slide more easily across each other. And that is much more how our body actually moves. Softening into the elbow here. That space just along the of the elbow. And so if between these two boards here that we laid as honey, with honey between them. So you warm it, you soften it, especially if that honey was in some way able to respond to emotion. Moving to the lung point on the thumb side of the elbow. Easing open, warming that honey between layers of tissue, layers of phyllo dough. Ooh, it sounds delicious. I think I'm describing baklava. The baklava on my brain. Large intestine points. Have you had baklava? Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's a little too rich.
It's very sweet. Yeah. Layers of thin dough with things like honey in between. And if it's cold, and people usually keep it in the fridge, it's one solid thing. But if it gets warm, everything slides around and it starts to move itself apart. We want to be like the warm honey. All these layers of tissue. We encourage it to fill with liquid and fluid, warm it up and let things soften and slip around. And that's what we're doing here. You are human baklava. Mm-hmm. You are far more delicious than you imagine. And then, pericardium 6 in the center. And if you'd like to do the opposite point, triple warmer 5, inner and outer gates at the same time. Soft, easy. You can feel them communicate to each other through the arm. Again, allowing your awareness to sink inside. And the heart, small intestine side, easing that open. Warming and softening those points, gentle circles, grasping, releasing. Down below, where I'm looking down there, we have a small creek and a waterfall that runs through down into the valley of our property. And just at the monastery, it flows into a pond that we have down there. And the little bridge that we had broke, so we went and got a big piece of solid granite. So beautiful. Just one solid piece. Put it in the back of the truck and the whole truck went. And I got to unload this thing by hand and load it. And I remember injuring this part of my wrist, moving that thing around. And I did needles and I did various kinds of treatments and it wasn't being helped, but it was this that helped. It was this kind of warming, softening quality. I did it for several days in a row and it got better and got better and got better because I was working at the wrong level. If I'm trying to work on the fascia, I have to be gentle and only sink in a little bit, allow my awareness to soak in just a little bit. Then you reach the right level of healing. You push too hard, you move right past it. Other things respond. And just for today, that pericardium 8 point, Lao Gong. That's one of the names that might be worth memorizing, Lao Gong, Laogong, just because you'll often see it written down or hear people talk about Lao Gong. Warming and softening. And then to the middle finger. Remember your image for the middle finger, for the pericardium. Interesting things going on.
Oh, yeah, I was just reading very kind comments in the chat. You might want to let people know that you always read the chat.
Yeah, just so you know, I always read the chats. If I can't do it in class, because I have the computer over there out of the way and stuff, and Mel doesn't always feel like it's the best thing to bring up in class. But at the end, I click end on the class, and then I have all of the chats to look at, and so I always read them at the very end. So feel free to write whatever you want. So get a feel for the pericardium channel on the body. It runs all the way up and in, softening it open, sliding down the pericardium channel here. Closing when you're done. Always settling. If you're getting tea, do you mind refilling my little cup?
Of course not.
Thank you.
Thank you for asking.
It's very kind. Now that she's gone, I can talk about her. Always softening. Arigato. Easy and comfortable. Emphasizing this downward direction, warming. Again, feel free to work any breast tissue lines that are helpful for you. and as well the lower point. Easing them open, gentle, letting your awareness again soak into the tissues. Feel more than just the surface of your skin, if you can. Not too far deeper. Lots of stuff going on. Oh, Chinese, not Japanese. Ah, gome. Sumimasen. Softening. And you can experiment, of course, with doing it wrong. Be too superficial, like slide your hand over your skin without really connecting. And then go way past and press into your bones. You feel like your tissue's being trapped against your bones. And then find something in between where there's this sense of nourishment and warmth soaking in, sliding over the bones. There's this classic Chinese image that goes with the internal martial arts a lot, where there's this moment of ice melting from the winter to the spring as the sun comes out, and there's the ice on the ground, and the very top layer of the ice melts. So it is still cold and hard, the ice is still there, but there's this slipperiness on top of the ice, and it makes the ice super slippery. So if you were to step on it, you would just go. There's zero friction there because of that layer of soft water on top. And that feeling of this warmth and fluidity over something solid is part of our experience of moving over and around the bones. Melting the yang over the yin. This fascial system, this layer, this membrane, in Chinese they call it baijing, the white tissue that just surrounds and covers everything in the body, through the whole body. Maybe 20 or 30 kilograms of this substance in your body. It has more nerve endings than muscle and around the bone. It sends huge numbers of signals to the brain. This quality called proprioception, part of how we know where we are in space. It actually communicates more quickly to your brain and central nervous system than your nerve endings do. People think it has like crystalline properties in the sense of like piezoelectric. Like if you put pressure on it, it generates electrical impulses just because of the shape. It's amazing. And it fills your entire system, transports fluids if it's warm and separate. We want to become very aware of this organ system in the body, finally being recognized by Western medicine, Western anatomists. I know, I guess that Anna's not here. But Anna, that's part of what she teaches professionally, It's about the fascial system. Your awareness soaking inside your body, like the warmth of your hands leads your awareness, and your awareness is like a soaker hose, moistening and warming. I just keep using different metaphors because one of them will stick. Everybody responds to a different one. They say, oh, that's a good one. So I wanted to show this wonderful little toy, gift from Melanie. It's a little wonky because it's been sitting in a box. I don't know if you can see, it's filled with hard things, like skeletal structures. I'll get closer here. So it's all these elastic bands and these hard points. But you notice that none of the hard things are touching each other? There's movement happening. It's resistant and resilient as a structure. I can't crush it. I could support things with it. But there are no hard things touching other hard things. The engineering term for this kind of structure is tensegrity. It's a kind of structure. And within our body, that's one of the kinds of structural stability that we generate. And that comes not from bones stacking up on top of each other, but through these fascial lines, sinew lines that run through our body that stretch and open. It's like a web through and around our entire body. And by opening and strengthening and learning how to allow our weight to rest in that structure, we become free and resilient in a way that we can't if we're just robotic. And then later we become more fluid, like tea. Thank you, nice and warm. Emphasizing the downward motion as you warm your back alongside the spine. And then gentle inward and upward movements along the spine itself, but you want to be careful not to try to push chi up. If you already have the habit of chi rushing upward, then maybe just allow the movement to sink in rather than to move upward along the spine. We need to find balance before pushing chi up too much. Warming the tailbone. For me, brisk, quick movements feel good in these areas. You might like soft and slow, soothing movements. Yeah, and because it may be that in a week, I really like the soft, slow movements, just because I'm listening to my body. So everyone should do that. We want to feel as quickly as we can that layer so we can experience directly how it's responding. And when it goes, you know we're doing the right thing. And we have to have a toolbox with different kinds of movements in them, different kinds of touch that allow us to find how to interact with that layer in a way that is soothing, melting. The mind is key. And I know that for some people, slowing and quieting the mind is a real difficult thing. It feels impossible. But remember that the mind and the body are not separate. So by learning to connect and to soften through the body, the mind will start to slow. For those of you that have been doing this now for a few weeks, you're probably already noticing a difference. A little bit more present, a little bit more grounded and stable, more able to be here but it can take time. And some minds are especially tight. So we put in extra time. Easing open these points. Spleen 10 up here above the knee. And you can move and do this in whatever way feels comfortable. You can do this one leg at a time, one hand at a time. It's perfectly okay. Find the way that is soothing to you. Easing open points, stomach 36, gallbladder 34 on the side of the leg. Letting your awareness soak into gallbladder 34 on the side of the leg can be very beneficial for helping your sinews to release. Should feel nice. Remember to stay present to yourself. It does feel good?
Yeah.
Good. Sure. Yeah. Best you can. So much of our time is spent damaging our knees. When we walk in, our knees tend to buckle inward, or we walk with our knees turned forward, but our toes turned out. And that's super destructive, or we walk and our knees are locked. So with every step, every banging of our foot against the ground sends a shockwave straight into the knee and just slowly dissolves the body's ability to protect itself. And that's not even just, car accidents and all the stuff that happens in life. People just doing everyday damage to themselves. every couple of years, Master ZhiCheng teaches a whole seminar on how to walk. How long does it usually last? 3 days at least, right? Yeah. And there's just so much to learn, to take in about it. Drink my warm tea. Jasmine, it smells amazing.
I received mine today.
Oh, yeah. You have to, I always put cold water in first, especially in the first. Let the tea leaves soak a little bit. It's one of the tricks from the tea house. You let the tea leaves soak in cold water first, and then so they become slightly plump and infused. They're less delicate at that point. And then it also cools down the hot water when you pour it on there.
That's really nice.
Yeah. At the tea house, sometimes we would pour the hot water from really far away, so it has time to cool before it gets into the teapot. So like maybe I'd pour it from here through a long spout, and it would cool to a certain degree by the time it hit the tea leaves.
Wow.
And it also looks really fun.
Yeah, I was trying to imagine what that looks like.
Yeah. My teacher's from Sichuan, sorry, talking to Mel over here. I studied the Cha Dao, the way of tea under a tea master. When China started handing out tea master labels, she was in the first 10 people who were given that honor. It was given out all at once, and she was the only woman. And she's amazing. And so highly recommend people go learn from her if you can. Her name's Juping, and she's from Sichuan, and she was telling stories about how there's a lot of gangsters in that area that do business in the tea houses. And so you can't walk close to the table because you might overhear something. So they developed this ability that became a trick with these very long handled or long spouted teapots to pour from across the room. And so she says that and I've never seen it, that streams of water will go over people's shoulders to fill the teapot in front of them.
Is that how they discovered the cooling method?
Probably, yeah. I mean, I've never seen it happen, but she said that that's what it's like over there.
That's why they did that originally, was
to stay away from the table. Yeah. And so now we just use it to cool the water for delicate tea leaves. Sorry. The more you know. Sorry, this came from because Mel oversteeped her jasmine tea. That's why we're talking about this strange topic. Jasmine is green tea. Dun dun dun. It's just jasmine. In this case, it's just jasmine petals infused into the tea. It's actually better to not have the flower petals added like this. It causes the tea to oxidize a little bit. Or at least it changes the tea. Oh. Sorry for the random tea discussion in class. Tea is one of those subjects I can go on long tangents about. As I press my thumb into my calf, you can think to yourself which channel it is that is pressing into your calf. The what channel? The T channel. And then as I move my hands down the muscle next to my shin here, the anterior tibialis, I can use my index finger to gently move across it to warm and soften this area of tight tissue that binds itself to the bone. You can think to yourself, what channel was it again that goes to the index finger? Mel is a bad student. Dell is a good student. But that's how we learn. That's why I'm asking. We can help each other learn. That's all learning looks like that. It's not like the way we, at least in the States, our schools are organized around competition among students and things. So as I grasp my calf muscle, releasing it a little bit, I can use my middle finger. And you could think to yourself what channel it is that goes to the middle finger. And just create that silly image, whatever it is, that helps you remember. And then you won't forget. Chinese medicine really is a wonderful area of study, not just if you want to go become a doctor or practice in a clinic, but it is a way of seeing the world that is incorporated with Daoist systems of thought. It's incorporated with the I Ching, the Book of Changes. It's incorporated with all of these ways of seeing the body holistically, understanding how the body works as an ecosystem, how it relates to other people, to the environment, to the seasons. And it really does change how we experience the world as humans. And so it is highly recommended that people take the time to study it. Most of the time, if you try to study it, it's being taught through the lens of doctors of Chinese medicine like me. But that is not what Chinese medicine is for. Chinese medicine is a way of understanding what it means to be human. And those books are a little harder to find, but it is worth taking the time. Oh, let's do this one first. Easing open your body, softening. And then you can rotate. Again, probably a little bit easier if you sit on the floor. Circling your feet. Letting that movement come all the way through. Make sure that your legs are soft and easy. Don't grip with your toes. Don't tighten around your knees. Just create movement all the way from the center. Both directions. And then, again, I'll mimic what I'm doing with my feet with my hands. Can be helpful to do them both at the same time, I think. Just because we're not used to connecting with our hands and feet. If you wanted to challenge your brain, you could do the opposite of what you're doing with your feet. Oh, wait. I'm already lost. There he goes. And then grasping with your feet, like you're trying to pick up something from the ground. Soft, opening and closing of your feet. Yeah, it's interesting. Helps to organize. The brain knows how to do this. You want to make sure you spread your toes as best you can, opening your feet, the bottom of your feet, and then closing around something, and then pulling up. You can also massage the bottom of your feet. This is nice to do. Remember that I recommend this series for everyone to do in bed before they get up. And I recognize that sometimes that's difficult depending on who you're sleeping with. But if you can, or if you're by yourself, do take the time before you get out of bed to wake up your feet, wake up your lower legs a little bit like this. At the very least, make sure that they're warm, and then get out of bed. And that is much better for your system. Softening the waist. Turning your navel rather than your shoulders. And I'll take my headset off. We want to tap the teeth. We want to flick and stretch the tongue without tension, and then circle the tongue around the teeth, inside and outside, again, without generating tension. Stop before then. And then gather the saliva, swallow. Do your best to follow it down. If your system is so habituated to sending chi up, as one of you told me, you may find that you swallow and chi still wants to jump upward. The only thing I can tell you is to continue to relax your throat as best you can and to let your mind go down. And at the end of it, if you need to, you can always do closing to help chi sink down to your navel. Settling your awareness into that space in the center of the body, this place here behind the navel, in front of the spine. Just remaining at rest. learning to feel the inside of your body. Thank you very much, everybody. Thanks for joining me. I can answer some questions pretty quickly. If anybody other than Del has questions, feel free to include them. I want to make sure that everybody gets the chance. I do have a discipleship class with Master ZhiCheng today, so I can't stay too long.
Maybe what I'll do, since we're limited on time, is read you a couple questions.
Oh, sure.
And you can decide which one you're going to answer.
Okay.
Because we have some really good ones.
Oh, great. And we can save them as well for other times.
Okay, so first question. Do you think Chinese medicine could benefit from adapting or adopting Western approaches to the mind, like psychology and therapy, or is it unnecessary?
Oh, so I can answer that fairly quickly. So the question is about, is it worthwhile from the Chinese medical perspective to adopt Western ideas of psychology? I do think that, especially for trained clinical psychologists, psychotherapists, it is a very useful method for healing and for treating people, and it's definitely evolving. And so to put them in a box and say it's all one field would be incorrect, because there's a lot of varying opinions, very varied opinions about how the mind works, how the self works, how emotions work. And so it's still evolving quite a lot from that. So I don't want to speak for it, especially since we have a professional in the room, in the chat room. But I will say that a lot of what I've learned about it as a non-expert, but a dabbler who reads a lot, is very often I don't like the perception around the nature of self, the perception around the relationship to each other, to the world, the way that emotion is often defined. I feel like it is either limited or I actually think it's harmful in some ways. But again, I can't put the whole thing into a box as though I understand the field of psychology and that I speak for all of Daoist psychology. Again, we just call it that. So I would say that for people practicing in this style of clinical psychotherapy, it is useful to be, it is vital to be trained in that system from the Western perspective. And that to practice Chinese medicine, clinically speaking, you don't need it, because we work with emotions and the mind and things from a different perspective. And so it would actually, it's considered entangling and problem causing if you try to mix the two. But I know some therapists certainly do mix the two successfully. And so from my perspective, I've never felt like dabbling in it, because we can unravel, for instance, my own anxiety was unraveled just through acupuncture. And so I think sometimes it's necessary and sometimes it's not. So that's my half answer. What was the other question?
The other question is, actually, let me go down and make sure there. Okay. So the other question, later, can you show me a neck exercise? I read yesterday the turtle is long because it exercises the spine and neck. And you are part of the turtle snake Qigong, so I think you can show me, please.
I recommend watching the snake and turtle Qigong videos, and the style of strengthening of the neck that we do isn't about, trying to lift weights with the neck or something like that. The first level of strength that has to come through this kind of strength, through integration of structure, through learning to release and lengthen the tissues by releasing, so that the head and neck can become integrated with the spine and with the rest of the body support. ZhiCheng Shifu often would demonstrate this by having somebody push and pull on his head. And he has a little spindly old man's neck. I hope he doesn't watch this. But he's incredibly strong. And it is not because he's tightening and he has like really strong muscles, but because his body is integrated and stable. So when you push on it, you're pushing on his whole body. So in this system, at least, we wouldn't want to isolate and strengthen the neck, but rather to integrate and heal the neck. And then from there, other things can happen after that process is done, but usually that's enough. So do the snake and turtle Qigong.
I think you may have answered this one a little bit. Is transforming the fascia the secret key to creating the fluid body?
Transforming the fascia is one important step toward creating the fluid body.
Do you want to elaborate there on any other questions?
No, I think that's just a thing of it. It's a huge question. I can't really go further into it because it also requires healing the mind, because the mind is how the internal system works. Healing the emotions, because that's part of the qi flow movement of the body, opening the channels, learning to connect the body, because a fluid body also is a body that is interconnected, not just structurally, but you also have to train it to be interconnected through movement. And so it's a larger subject, but the restoration of the fluid body is the creation of the Taiji body. And so, yeah, the Taiji Ren, this Taiji creature, Taiji person, is a whole process. Thank you, Mags. Sorry for talking about all this strange esoteric stuff. It's totally unnecessary. Just do the practice and have fun. I'm trying to include a little bit more Chinese medicine chat around the channel so people learn the basics, but you certainly don't need it to practice.
Okay, we have one last question here if you have time. Sometimes I feel like I have to choose between love or Qigong as a cultivator. Did you ever run into this?
I don't understand the question.
Oh, I wonder if it's like choosing where to invest your time and energy. Maybe like if you have, I'm guessing, maybe he'll clarify. But yeah, he's wondering if romantic love can get in the way.
Oh, get in the way of Qigong. Well, I mean, that's like saying if you have a deep, obsession with biscuits or something like that, not the cat, but the food, and does that get in the way? Or playing an instrument. I play an instrument. I used to be really obsessive about playing music, and it would get in the way of other things that I did. I think it's more about investment of time in that case. Romantic love can also be destabilizing, depending on how you're involved in it. There's this whole phenomenon called NRE, which is worth looking up, and new relationship energy, because there's a whole period of time, I can't remember, maybe Steph remembers, where entire sections of your brain shut off when people, you get these dumps of hormones into the system, and it's designed to make it so that we don't think long term. We just want what we want right now, and it's certainly a good evolutionary tool to reproduce the species. But it physically turns off some of our capabilities for planning and making good decisions. And I'm not saying that that's how you're doing it, but it is a common thing. And so from that perspective, that can be destabilizing and cause problems, because the goal is to always be centered and peaceful, to not be caught up in desire. So if something is pushing your desire button, craving button, then that is inherently bad for you. And so it's hard, but you can certainly have relationships without that style of romantic obsession love. For sure, you can. And so that's the style of cultivation that you want within a relationship as well, because that's also far more likely to last a long time. Cultivating love that isn't related to obsessiveness or need, want, because that always is inherently not great for long-term relationships. It can certainly be fun, and so have at it. But of course, it can get in the way of other things that are trying to make you peaceful and stable. If your mind is always being pulled away and whole sections of your cognitive ability are being shut off, which I've definitely experienced at least a dozen times in a really big way. Okay, and now I'm going to go to class. I love you all very much. I will save this chat section and look at it later, but I have to go meet with my instructor right now because I still train for hours and hours every day, and so I have to make sure that I make time for that as well. Thank you so much, everybody, and feel free to keep typing in the section here if you want, because it stays there for me. But as I will, please go off and enjoy your practice.